So I woke up this morning to a very crazy story.
Police making arrests after a human torso and foot were found inside a building in the Bronx.
And I wanted to share it because it's one that I think can help you to detect subtle forms of manipulation, the kind that you maybe don't always catch on to, so that you don't wind up falling for it in the future. But for context, this is a story that starts 1 month ago on the Joe Rogan Experience. It's this guy, Sheldon Johnson, who describes getting a 50-year sentence for a relatively minor assault charge. And since then, he's gone on to champion prison reform and all kinds of wonderful things, but I actually had to turn this podcast off because at the time that I was listening to it, I found that I was having a really hard time believing the guy to the point where I just said, I can't listen to this anymore. 1 month later, headlines are:
Ex-con turned criminal justice reform activist caught, police say, with a head in his freezer.
And so I want to dive back into this podcast to see what was I feeling at the time? Can we analyze that? And how can we take that into our lives for the more mundane kinds of manipulations that we might face every single day? So the first thing is this, and this is really, really key. You are going to be so much more prone to manipulation and falling for things that aren't true when the person who is doing it is receiving an MC from someone else. And what I mean by that is that you're receiving information about that person before you experience them that colors that experience. And this is what happened on the Joe Rogan podcast. Just listen. This is Josh Dubin, who runs the program that helped Sheldon to get his sentence reduced.
And I want to make clear, one thing that has always struck me about Sheldon is his vulnerability, but also his honesty. He has a remarkable story to tell and a perspective on his circumstances, the system, and he's someone that's taken responsibility for what he did.
In this, we get that Sheldon is responsible, honest. It was a minor offense, and there's many, many minutes of talking about how the criminal justice system was just sort of stacked against him. It's this kind of emceeing that can really color your perspective as someone. And for instance, where this might happen in your life, if you're ever reviewing a resume, whether it's your company or the company that you work at, if you see that someone went to a prestigious school or previously worked at a company and says that they had some huge initiative there, what you might tend to do is then go into that interview looking for things that confirm that and not trusting the gut part of you that says, this isn't adding up with the person that I'm experiencing in front of me. And that can be even more sharply experienced if you have like a trial period with that person. Same thing occurs with friends. They tell you, oh my God, you're going to love this guy. Or in the reverse direction, he's a dickhead, a douchebag. Don't trust that guy. The emceeing that we experience has a tremendous effect on coloring how we experience other people. And I think it's because we learn to discount our gut, and we don't ask when we have a bad feeling about someone, why is there a discrepancy here? We say, what's wrong with me? Why am I not seeing what other people are seeing? And we think that the problem is us, and then work to override that feeling. I really hope that this video, amongst everything that it could do for you, helps you to stop doing that. So I want to take you now to the second thing to focus on, or that you can tend to notice when you're listening to someone, is when they're sharing a story that they're embarrassed about, or they feel shame over, or they say that they're repentant for, do they express that they had control and have control, and are they taking responsibility? A really, really subtle way that this can get communicated is in the switching between I and you pronouns. So to illustrate, here's I pronouns and also active verbs. Take a look.
Went to school for a week and I just dropped back out. I just saw no purpose in going to school. And I really didn't go back to school and really educate myself until I went to prison. Today, I'm pursuing a master's in human services.
So in that, we hear a lot of I saw, and also active verbs, I pursue. I want you to contrast that with when he starts talking about the incident that landed him in jail.
I felt like I couldn't back out of the situation. Nothing bad happened, but it's just the idea of sometimes growing up and adopting these values and these morals. Here. And you begin to take them on as part of your characteristics, and you end up making really, really bad decisions that can cost you for the rest of your life.
This is actually a common rhetorical thing. You might say you to bring someone into a story for many different reasons. You've probably heard me in the course of this video say, this is something that you can see that you can see.
Can help you to detect subtle forms of manipulation.
It's not a problem when someone uses the word you. The question is when and why are they switching to it? And if they're telling a story that they are either potentially ashamed about, that they are claiming to have taken responsibility for, and you start to get the distance of you instead of I, that can be an indicator, a verbal indicator of what's occurring inside of them, which is they are separating themselves from the person who did that, a prior version of themselves, which is not taking full responsibility for that. Now, this alone isn't a big problem. But stacked up with what I'm going to show you next is where my radar started to go off. And here, what I want you to look for are shrugs, both physical shrugs, shoulders going up, and verbal shrugs.
That's the four got dismissed.
Got dismissed.
Right,
I got
so
acquitted.
So then you come home.
So then I come home and, you know, I need my money. I need my money. It's just me being honest. It's just me being straight.
So we're getting to the part where the assault occurs, and you're going to hear a lot more of this and see a lot more of this. So what is a shrug? And I said the verbal shrug. I'll describe that in a moment. What a shrug is it's a gesture that says, I don't know. Why are you looking at me? It can be innocent, which is to say, you know, what's for dinner? And I go, I don't know. That's not my responsibility. I have nothing to do with that. But in situations where we're talking about things that someone is alleged to have done and alleged to have taken responsibility for, when we see a lot of shrugging, that can be an indicator that they're not there yet. It's also got that upturned palm, like, don't come to me. I got nothing for you here. We see the verbal shrug is when there's that upward inflection.
I need my money.
Like almost asking, what do you want me to do? I have no choice in this. You'll also get that sort of, you'll just look at his face, what's going on with his lips. I'm not exactly sure how to recreate it. That look that communicates to you that you're coming to the wrong person if you're looking for someone who's going to take responsibility for this. That string wasn't bad, but look at this next string.
On consignment, I gave him an eighth of a kilo, which is 125 grams of cocaine.
We do have some eye here.
And when I saw him, he had a bunch of jewelry on. He was with his girlfriend. She had a bunch of jewelry on. And I said, hey, man, where's my money at? Oh, yo, I was going to pay you. As far as I was concerned, his jewelry we was even. So I robbed him.
There's the eye.
And I took his jewelry. And his girlfriend happened to be there. And unfortunately, she got caught up in the situation.
Now we have not just shrugs, but we have language that is really, really passive, really lacking in description, and it's tough to capture in some of these clips. This is a 2.5-hour podcast, and they dive deep in areas, but where there's really, you have a hard time getting clarity in what happened is in the offenses that occurred. Like, he is very quick to go over them and very quick to dismiss his culpability and responsibility for it. So she just happened to be there. Continue to listen to his language.
I had a bunch of young guys with me, and they robbed her as well.
They did it.
And he got hit in the head with the gun right here.
So to be clear, he organized this group of people to go here. They robbed her, and he got hit, which doesn't describe who did it. He'll later say that it wasn't him, but there's this out of control style of describing this entire thing, which is not responsibility taking. Responsibility taking acknowledges one's control. Now, I don't want to get deep into the socioeconomics of it, but a huge part of this podcast is the pieces that are out of people's control. And I'm really, really happy that they talk about that. It needs to be discussed. The ways in which the environment contributes to poverty, contributes to crime, deeply important. But if you're interacting with someone, any walk of life, who, when they review what happened, can't hold their responsibility in it, that's someone that I would say you probably don't want to be trusting to hold responsibility in the future.
On the side of his head, and he got 2 stitches. And they gave me 25 years for that case.
25 years, and it starts not making sense. And this is where, if you've seen some shrugs, you get the energy is off. This is where you might notice that stories don't add up. So that's one story that doesn't add up. But there was one prior that I didn't notice. It set me off the first time I listened to it, but it was only in rewatching that I went, oh, this was the moment that I went, I'm not sure about that. And Joe has the same reaction.
Wow.
Just for context, he's telling a story how at 10 years old in school, when kids would act up, the teacher would hit them on the hand with rulers with salt on their hands so that it would burn even more. And one day, the teacher went to do it to him, and he pulled his hand away and ran away from the teacher, ran into the hallway, and sprayed him with a fire extinguisher at 10 years old. And then, it's not exactly made clear, he spends 3 years in a psych ward as a result of this.
Fended for myself. I was out in the
So
street.
it was 3 years of that?
3 years of that.
For one instance
For
where a
one
guy's
instance.
trying to hit you with a fucking ruler.
Yes.
Wow.
And so this brings up a very challenging experience for a lot of people, which is when someone comes to you with a story of victimization that might seem difficult to believe or outside of the normal bounds, how do we handle that? One school of thought has been believe victims. And I see that as a response to people who have been victimized. They've had stories that maybe we weren't ready to accept, that there was abuse going on in Hollywood or these other places. And in an attempt to correct for that, this believe victims mentality has crept in. And I think it's naive. I think a lot of people have started to realize this because you don't know who is a victim and you don't know who is simply using the fact that victims can be believed as a cloak in order to shield themselves. And even more than that, someone can be both a victim and a perpetrator at different times of their life. I think a much better way of handling this is that when someone brings anything to you is to hold what they say gently. If you have some alarm bells that are going off inside of you, don't immediately make that invalidate their story. If something isn't adding up for you, that doesn't mean that someone else is lying. What it means, perhaps, is that you want more information or that maybe someone else would be a better support for them. But I think the thing that happens is we try to rectify our internal system with someone's external story, either by pushing onto them, no, you're lying, or by receiving, well, everything you're saying is true, and that's where we get into trouble. What I really want this video to do is to help you have your own internal alarm system that goes off just for you. You may not be a judge. In fact, I'm going to assume that most of you are not. You're not making decisions for other people. What you are doing day in, day out with employees, friends, dates, whatever, is making decisions for yourself. You don't have to have universal certainty 100% beyond the shadow of a doubt in order to say, you know what, this isn't right for me, and I don't need to make this person a liar, wrong, or bad in order to not hire them, not work with them, not believe them, not date them, whatever. So I hope that's something that you take. There's one other piece that I want to touch on. When someone is speaking to you, they often can't help but leak their values. This is just something that comes through. And this happens a couple of times in the podcast, but there was one scenario that I thought was particularly pointed. And yeah, let's take a look.
I think a lot of these younger kids are also suffering from the same thing. They don't. And the system sets you up to the system tricks you. Because you catch these cases and what they do is they slap you on the wrist, right?
I know that catch these cases is a common parlance in the street for committing a crime, but you notice that even in there, there's this happened to me. It's like catching a cold. I couldn't have prevented it. I caught a case. That language is throughout.
You catch this gun charge and they say, oh, no, we're just going to give you 6 months. Don't worry about it. What they don't tell you is that gun charge is a pretext now to enhance your sentence when you catch another case. So it's almost like a form of entrapment, right?
This is where I felt like there was some real discrepancy in the values, which is he's describing getting a lenient sentence for a gun charge and only getting a slap on the wrist for it as entrapment, because when you commit another crime, now that's held against you, as if that's some form of victimization of somebody who, had you punished them more severely in the beginning, would have expected a more severe punishment. And it sort of indicates a worldview where you know what is bad based on how harshly you're punished. And again, with all of this, I think that the opportunity for socioeconomic commentary is obviously there. I'm not like, this guy's story is really horrifying, and I don't need to doubt the place that he came from and the difficulties that he dealt with and how that contributed to the crimes that he eventually committed at all in order to share this with you. What I want to bring up that I felt in this that you might see in your life is just that ability to trust your inner alarm system, to say, you know what, I'm not the judge, I'm not here to send you to jail, but this isn't right for me. It might not come in as much dire circumstances in your own life, but it will be there. And I just really hope that you learn to trust that inside of yourself. So I hope that you've enjoyed this video. If there's something about it that you'd like or would like to see any other sort of breakdown like this, let me know if there's a topic. I'm happy to cover it, and I'll catch you in the next video.